whether in his own mind he should have used those words. That's his business. Question number 10, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Primary Industries. Does he believe that New Zealand has robust biosecurity in light of Mycoplasma bovis and other recent incursions?
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Mr Speaker, yes I do. This government has placed a huge focus on biosecurity, and overall funding is now at a record high of $248 million per year. Even if we completely closed the borders, biosecurity would not be zero risk. Therefore, responding to incursions is an expected part of our overall biosecurity system. On average, the overall number of incursions per year has been consistent with previous years going back to 2000. This is despite strongly increasing passenger and cargo volumes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, does his belief that New Zealand has robust biosecurity and border processes extend to the import health standards for bovine semen and embryos? If not, why not?
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Mr Speaker, our import health standards are a legal document, and indeed there is an investigation underway to try and determine how M. bovis made its way to New Zealand. I would prefer not to speculate. I would prefer that the investigation is allowed to get on with the good job that I'm sure it will do.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how does his belief that New Zealand has robust biosecurity, border processes and import health standards square with Mycoplasma bovis, myrtle rust being found almost exclusively in nurseries, and pea weevil and velvet leaf being present in beet seeds that were certified weed-free?
The Honourable Nathan
Mr
Guy.
Speaker, we've got a multi-layered biosecurity system. To do with myrtle rust, this is wind-borne. New Zealand First seemed to think that passenger brought it into New Zealand. The reality is, if they have a look at the NIWA wind plume modelling, there are 6 wind events this year with a very high probability that myrtle rust has been carried across the Tasman and reached New Zealand.
What a stuff up. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how does he reconcile his belief in New Zealand's robust biosecurity and border processes with the fact that there have been over 150 biosecurity incursions since the election in 2008, mushroom compost containing animal manure being imported from Europe, and now, of all things, mud from overseas being imported into Rotorua?
That's right.
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Mr Speaker, I was delighted in Budget 2017 that $18.4 million has been allocated to further strengthen the biosecurity system. That will allow us to review the most at-risk import health standards. And actually, if New Zealand First and Labor want to get serious about biosecurity, they will need to front up to farmers and wool sheds and cow sheds up and down the country in the campaign and say why they didn't vote for the border clearance levy. That's a huge embarrassment for them when they talk about funding.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how can biosecurity be robust when not one New Zealand airport has ever achieved MPI's compliance targets, and while this government's much vaunted National Animal Identification and Tracing Scheme for tracking livestock movements is only now being initiated, 10 days after Mycoplasma bovis was first confirmed?
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Mr Speaker, if the member wants to refer to the investments that this government has made just in recent times to do with the biosecurity system, I just want to remind him 50 new biosecurity staff, 20 new dog detector teams, new X-ray machines, which means we can do more at the border, the border clearance levy, which means we've got more funding. With increased tourism numbers, we've now got more funding to focus and do more provide more services on the border. We are doing a huge amount. We've got 14 government industry agreements whereby industry has signed up and partnering with the government on preparedness and response. There's a huge amount happening, and I'm actually very proud of the fact that this government has achieved a huge amount in terms of strengthening the overall biosecurity system.
Question number 11, Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage.